In der zentralen Position, nur Schwarze hat er noch vor sich, dann ist es vielleicht noch, er ist im Strafraum und der Tor! Tor! Für die Frankfurter Eintracht, 5:1.
Hi and welcome to the German Fußball Podcast. I'm your host Markus Fjortoft, and as always I have Dad by my side, and as we always tend to start these episodes lately, Dad, let's check in on where you're calling in from, almost like a Eurovision plug-in. Where are you and what do you have on the agenda? I suspect there is a certain game tomorrow that will be covered.
Yeah, for the first time, not the first time this week, the second time this week, we are in the same country, but it was so great to have you and your girlfriend home in Norway, which is home for us, but now I'm your home country, England. I'm in Manchester, of course, and I tend to, when the big games like tomorrow, Arsenal visiting Manchester City, I like to go the day before because you never know with traveling arrangements, strikes or whatever. And this morning when I left Oslo, it was snowing, but it was great to get out of that snow. And it's sunny Manchester. And a little anecdote is that the last time I was tweeting is sunny Manchester was when Borussia Mönchengladbach played Manchester City. And in the evening, the game was called off because of all the rain. I think that's the first time in the Champions League history a game was cancelled. So I had to wait till the next day. So I'm in Manchester preparing for the game. Will be a big game in the Premier League between Manchester City and Arsenal, between Erling Haaland and Martin Ødegaard. And we are very fortunate, Marcus, that whatever happened, a Norwegian will win the Premiership this year. And if people ask, has that happened before? Yes, we had three players, Ronny Johnsen, Henning Berg, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer from Manchester United. And I'm just thinking, has anybody else won it? We have some players like...
We have some ballers in the league, but no.
Henning Berg won with Blackburn as well, by the way.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah, some of them.
Norwegians won with the Bundesliga, with the Norwegian record.
Yes, Rune Bratseth won the Bundesliga. Well, we're being a bit difficult now for ourselves. So we started with a quiz that we haven't even prepared. Erling Johnsen was also in Bayern Munich, but I'm not sure that he won the Bundesliga. Einar Aas, the first Norwegian in English football, was also in Bayern Munich. He must have been one of the first one there as well. We had one of my old teammates, Anders Giske, who played for Cologne. But now we're going long into the quiz without being 100% sure that we are right in terms of winning the trophies. And one of my team colleagues in the national team, Jørn Andersen, he was the first Norwegian or the first foreigner to win the Torjägerkanone, so be the top scorer in the league. He did that in 1990, the year that West Germany, which they were called at that time, won the World Cup, and Jørn Andersen won the Torjägerkanone, which was an unbelievable performance, and I think very well done to him.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, you got your Norwegian trivia today. And if we go into the Bundesliga, Dad, yes, admittedly, my dear Arsenal will go against City in what will be a rather tough encounter at the Etihad. But then we also have, and we've kept saying this week in and week out now, we actually have a title race in the Bundesliga. And with all that's happened these last few weeks, Dad, and we were discussing what do we want to discuss. And of course, we will discuss the round, an overview, so to speak, of certain selected teams. But it's really hard to do these Bundesliga roundups, Dad, without touching upon Bayern. And you've been vocal. You've been on ESPN. You've been on the Bayern Insider with our former guest, Christian Falk, which I would recommend for anyone understanding German. Been a lot around you, Dad, lately, since you came out with the statement about Kahn. How have you experienced these last few days from when it came out to now it being developed into something a bit more larger than it was when it first came out?
Yes, and I do always what I do. I'm not a Romaro or a Falk. I'm not living as a transfer expert, so to say, but I speak to a lot of different people. And I got to know this on Tuesday last week, like when we are speaking now, that is 1 week ago. This is the day before the Bayern Munich game against Manchester City. And I got confirmed that Oliver Kahn was discussed, evaluated in terms of his job done as a CEO of Bayern Munich. Of course, being the guy that I am, I would like to take it out straight away. But I discussed that with my source, and we came to the point that let's wait till after the game. Let's see what's happening. Having said that, also, you know how it is. If Bayern Munich have won 4-0, they were all being gods, and things could look better as well. That's how short-term and long-term football are at the same time. So Thursday morning, I sent out the tweet. I used my Twitter account to say that Oliver Kahn, not Salihamidžić, because Salihamidžić is protected by Uli Hoeneß. I'll talk more about Uli Hoeneß soon. But Oliver Kahn's job as a CEO of Bayern being evaluated, being seen as the main responsibility for a very bad season of Bayern. Bayern will always be level on the treble, saying that you have to challenge for the Champions League, you have to win the Bundesliga, that you have to do, and the cup, you'll take that as well. So the double, they fire people here at this club called Bayern when they get in a double. Ask Felix Magath, he got the doubles in a row. Niko Kovac won the double, got fired. So it was quite interesting. Then it exploded, Marcus. And as you know, I've used the same strategy all my life, at least when I get a bit older, that when I behind something, I just like to see how thing develops. I think we always learn things when someone open it up, and you open up for German journalists. A lot of the German journalists knew about the speculation, the rumors that what was going on, but they didn't feel that they could discuss that. And I had one journalist who said, when I said the day before that something big will happen, they said, oh, hopefully it's not our story. So they were kind of building that up, and they said that they hoped that I would say that Salihamidžić will be fired. But when I said Oliver Kahn, they said, wow, shit, he knows about this situation. And it's been interesting, and as it is in our media landscape, I got an offer from all sports channels in Germany to do something, to comment on it. But to be fair, Marcus, I kind of told what I wanted to tell. The rest is analysis. The rest is speculation of what's gonna happen, and it's quite interesting. So I, like you said in your start, what I did was to be with our friend Christian Falk, who's been a very generous guest at our podcast, a guy that I've known for many years. I discussed it there. He sent me on Friday. He sent me back that we were topping the charts in chart in Germany, but I'm not saying it's down to me. I think it's down to the big thing of this case, because this is the most powerful man to be a CEO of Bayern. You're the head of one of the biggest brands in the world. What is quite interesting, Marcus, and you must add to this because you see it a bit more outside than me. It's quite interesting that we've now had this going on for 5 days. On Sunday, there were an awful lot of programs discussing it. Oliver Kahn commented it and said, irgendeiner, meaning someone, was tweeting something. So I am Mr. Someone now, which is good. I played against Oliver Kahn. I played against him 3 times, scored 2 goals, chipped him once. I love that. We won in Munich. But what is quite interesting, Marcus, is what not being said. So Uli Hoeneß, who kind of decide everything, he's the president of honor. He is a guy that goes into Sebenerstraße, which is the training resort of Bayern Munich, more or less every day. He is the guy who kind of is the Machiavelli or Lorenzo de Medici behind a lot of things that are happening in Germany, in Bundesliga, in Bayern, been since the end of 70s. He hasn't said anything as we speak, which is quite interesting. I said that it's a matter of time before that will happen. I can't define it any better. I saw that Bild Zeitung and also Florian Plettenberg in the Sky. They were saying that will go happening after the season. I saw a date that there will be a boarding meeting. There are different boards in Germany, but there will be a boarding meeting the 22nd of May. So let's see the development. But what I can say is that my My source was very good. My source was spot on. I think my timing was spot on, because now a lot of people do confirm the same issues that's going around the Bayern Munich.
You mentioned there that initially, and it was Christian Falk who mentioned it in the podcast, where they saw that you would come up with a teaser, as we discussed a couple of podcasts ago, in which you say, I have a big announcement coming out. It was a little teaser. And then you dropped it after the Champions League game, the loss to City when Bayern went out of the Champions League. But they said, maybe he thinks it's Brazzo, Salihamidžić, but it wasn't. So why would they think it would be Brazzo? Why isn't it him? And yeah, go from there, I guess.
Yeah, but because Marcus, if another coach than Tuchel, if there was another timing of the stats he has had lately, he would be fired. Thomas Tuchel would be fired if he was someone else. But he's been there for 7 games, is it? Lost 3 already. Same amount of games that Nagelsmann lost in his, if I remember, 37 games or something in the Bundesliga or whatever. But just shows you the balance in that. So he will be fired. So who's next in the order if you're going to fire something? That is the Salihamidžić, which is the head of sport. You may say that the German press sometimes celebrate big signings as Bayern, as Elvis. I said the other day, the Elvis and Jesus arriving in Germany on the same plane, because sometimes they're always the biggest names coming to Germany, they say, which is not always the case. But Sadio Mane should replace Lewandowski. Czech didn't happen.
And Salihamidžić was even rewarded with a contract renewal. We remember the phrases that were being sung about him after that.
Absolutely. And what my German colleagues don't like to hear, but I will say it, sometimes they do that to celebrate, to make sure that Bayern are good with them and they are good with them. That is a part of our game. That is a part of our dynamic in the funny relationship between decision makers, between clubs and journalists. That is a fact. I'm a part of it. A lot of people are a part of that. But if I've said it before and I said it again, you saw the away game against Manchester City, 5 of 6 new players on the bench, only De Ligt playing. So everybody thought that would be Salihamidžić, but Salihamidžić, like I said, is protected by Uli Hoeneß. It's his man. This is his man in the management of the club. So they will save Salihamidžić and they will go after Kahn. Who are they? Which is quite interesting at Bayern. They are kind of Uli Hoeneß, is Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, 2 of the strongest leaders in history of German football. Some of the strongest football leaders achieved fantastic things at Bayern. And let's see now, which is quite interesting now, by day, Thomas Tuchel gave the boys, after the 3-1 loss in Mainz, where they were okay for 60, 70 minutes, then losing 3-1. He said it looks like the players have played 70, 80 games. They look tired. And I think that this all the speculations around Bayern has always been good for them, because somehow they managed to take that energy from outside and use that as enthusiasm to show everybody that they're going to cope with it. And that is a part of Bayern. There's always been, it's called FC Hollywood for a reason. And they managed to turn that around. They can do that again. But as you've seen now, I would say the draw against Hoffenheim, the game against Manchester City, although it was a bit better, and the loss in Mainz, I will say that everything around the club now is kind of drained them. The theory could be, Marcus, that before you had a Rummenigge, before you had a Uli Hoeneß, he managed to kind of cover them, set up a defense wall for them. And Kahn and Salihamidžić don't have that ability. They're not, well, they aren't that strong leaders, so that maybe that they're not able to protect the players like some of the old boys used to do.
Yeah, what I'm not convinced by is that, and you've been adamant in kind of your criticism of Kahn in terms of him being the CEO of this global brand with so many important and big stakeholders. And on one hand, I'm wary of the fact that they are new to it. I mean, new in the sense of Karl-Heinz Rummenigge or Uli Hoeneß, who have this aura, Mr. Bayern. They are these powerful men. But then I see whether it's body language, whether it's how they carry themselves, and just not, I'm not convinced by it. And you touched upon it there with Kahn going into the changing room following the loss there, and a speech, and you said something along the lines of asking the players to clean up the mess that you created yourself. It's one of those where they put themselves in these positions, even when you went all in for Haaland, even though there was, they weren't favorites to sign him, went all in, lost out on Haaland, lost out on Lewandowski, went all in for Tuchel after firing Nagelsmann, saying they were all in for Nagelsmann, fire him, go in all in for Tuchel, that fails. Sometimes I question the strategy as well as the natural body language, how they carry themselves, where they are those leaders Bayern need. And then I'm aware of the fact that we're putting it all on one or two persons again, that maybe is a problem when we blame only the coach as well. But those are my thoughts around those, if that makes sense to you.
Remember, the philosophy of Bayern is one of the strengths of Bayern. They have managed to have former Bayern players, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge, former star by Bayern, Uli Hoeneß, former star by Bayern Munich, being in key positions. So it's fair to say that the philosophy is like that. They want to have coaches that once played for the club. They try that out. Two of the great exception of that is Ottmar Hitzfeld or Jupp Heynckes. But if you just go through the names with Kovac and Jürgen Klinsmann and all the rest of them, they've always been there because they had this connection to Bayern. And that's fair enough. But I think there is another kind of thing. Even as a sport director, you can say they used to have Christian Erlinger, who was the player at the club. Now they take Salihamidžić into that. We can discuss if he's a good or bad sport director. But then again, Marcus, you kind of get away from that because you're the sport. That's fair enough. That is a sport background. That is something basic for the job you're doing. It's another ball game if you're the CEO of a club. A CEO of the club is the biggest leader of the club. You're responsible not only for the dressing room, not only for the coaches and the sport directors of the club. You are responsibility for everything at the club. Everything. You're running the club is like a share company. You are the CEO. And if you are a CEO of a big company and your only kind of background is that you were the goalkeeper of Bayern Munich, in my view, that is not enough. It's a good part of that job. It's a good background. It helps you for your credibility. But we have to stop by saying this kind of thing that footballer, just because you were a footballer, that you can manage to do any job. Maybe you can be a good coach. Maybe you could be a good sport director. But the CEO need to be more. And people will say, well, Uli Hoeneß put Oliver Kahn in there because he was the head. Yes. And Sir Alex Ferguson put David Moyes at Manchester United. David Moyes is a good manager, but he didn't succeed. He was a wrong manager at Manchester United at that time. So what you have to ask yourself, and not only we two talk about that, that was what I said. This is discussed in the club. Does he have the ability to be the top man at the club, the CEO at a big club? What I have been told after I went out to this, one of the reasons is that he doesn't have the support of the employees, most employees, because he never more or less have built up a relationship to them. They were used to have people going around talking to everybody at every department. Oliver Kahn doesn't apparently do that. So he doesn't have the support from the employees. And they got so many employees. This is a big, big company. And there's also been criticism of Oliver Kahn that he has not been visible. He hasn't been there. He has been away. We haven't been in the office, Marcus. This is things we are told. But this is one of the reasons why Oliver Kahn is now fighting for his CEO life at Bayern Munich.
Just to conclude, it's needless to say that since you came out with this story, it has taken more of a form from it being something of which you say is that you don't tell it unless your sources are secure. But now with more journalists coming out to confirm it, and I guess we could do a separate episode on why you probably were the one who came out with it rather than the German journalists, as the dynamic there between Bayern and the media is different. But, you know, there's still a good chance they might win the league. Whether that is enough for Bayern to deem this season a success is up for us and for them to value, really. But we would love to see a different winner, wouldn't we, Dad? And despite Dortmund beating our dear Eintracht 4-0, a very convincing win for Dortmund, there is that lingering feeling that even though Bayern are on a rather downward trajectory, it seems like Dortmund's biggest enemy is themselves.
Absolutely. I think the biggest enemy of Dortmund is Dortmund, not Bayern. What is quite interesting this time, Marcus, is that I always talk about this. We talk about machines, we talk about football stars, but we do remember that they have the same mental capacity as everybody else. Then you have some exceptions like Erling Haaland and others who can manage to block all this out. But what was quite interesting with Dortmund, in the last episode, Marcus, we said typical Bayern, typical Dortmund. Typical Bayern is to win. Typical Dortmund is to bottle it. And which they did after the 1-1 against Hoffenheim. They had an embarrassing performance in Stuttgart, 2-0 down, 2-2. Stuttgart with 10 men, 3-2 in the 92nd, 97, 3-3. Typical Dortmund. So now after 3-1 in Mainz, they played at 18:30 local time. It was a top spiel at Sky, and they managed to win convincingly. And I went through, Marcus, the last games, excuse me, I have to put on my glasses. It's quite interesting now that on this Friday, Dortmund is playing in Bochum. So we can say it's so typical Dortmund to give a point away there. But still, Bayern is playing Hertha on Sunday, which will mean so they can Bayern can go into that game being 4 points behind Dortmund. The next round is, but say that they both win, and they're still 1 point. Then Bayern is playing one of their old enemies, Bremen away, Wolfsburg away for Dortmund on the Sunday. So it's not the same day. Next time, Bayern got Schalke at home, 15:30, and Dortmund 18:30. Next round, Leipzig at home for Bayern, Augsburg away on Sunday for Dortmund. And then the 34th round is on the same when Dortmund is playing Mainz at home and Bayern Köln away, which is not a great place to go. My point is, Marcus, that we will see a lot of twists and turns in the last 5 games. It's not so that I think that Bayern and Dortmund will get 15 points. I can't see that happening. I can't see that happening with the lack of stability that Bayern have had. I can't see it for Dortmund because of their weakness. They have sometimes, Terzi said it himself, that sometimes we are too stupid to do that. Bochum now away. Schlotterbeck looks like he's been injured. He's out of the game. Mats Hummels is in. They scored a goal in the last round. So there's going to be a lot of twists and turns. And do we want Dortmund to win the league? Of course we do. That's because we love the Bundesliga. I think that the only one who wants Bayern to win is the Bayern fans. And that has nothing to do with how much I respect them, how impressed I am with the club. It's probably outside my favorite clubs, what I played for, and Leeds United from my childhood, one of the teams that I love most to see, you see. So so I'm looking forward to the twists and turns.
Yeah, and it's one of those where when we get to the end of this as well, and we can tie in the chase for European places as part of this, but Xabi Alonso has done a fantastic job with Bayer Leverkusen. Now, I'm wary of the fact that Bayer Leverkusen are where we'd expect them to be, if not higher, competing for Champions League spots, making a European Cup semi-final for the first time in 21 years, which is, you know, we could see something resembling of an Eintracht Frankfurt run in the Europa League as well, which would be great for Bayer Leverkusen, for Xabi Alonso, and for German football. But if you look at the top 4, that as well, you have Union Berlin, who won 1-0 away to Gladbach, 5 points behind Dortmund, 4 points behind Bayern. and looking to cement their Champions League spots, but they're lingering in behind there. And then you have Freiburg at 4th, RB Leipzig outside the Champions League places, and then with the way Bayer Leverkusen are performing, you'd fancy them to take almost the top 4 spot. But there's a lot of interesting narratives developing all across the table right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't even started with a relegation battle. But if you did a good analysis of the Champions League spaces, imagine you ending up with Bayern, Dortmund, Union Berlin, and Freiburg. That is quite interesting. Then you can have the usual suspects will be RB Leipzig, Leverkusen coming in. Then people could say it's exactly like we tipped before the season. So I hope at least that one of them, Union Berlin and Freiburg, will be rewarded for a great season. It will be a great season anyway, but still, I will love that. But I will end, Marcus, by talking about Xabi Alonso, because Xabi Alonso, once back in the days, I played a charity game. I played at Barcelona. I run a charity for MTG, which was the Viaplay the ownership. And we played at Barcelona, and I played with Mika Laudrup, one of the greatest footballers of his time. Could be discussed when we talk the best players of all times, by the way. So when I introduced him, because I introduced him afterwards, I don't know if I remember all teams he played for, but still he played for Ajax, Juventus, Real Madrid, and Barcelona. And the aura he had around him when he played in that charity game, I remember I was going for a run, and the ball just came over my head and landed in front of me, and I scored a goal. I mean, that was a charity game, and I kind of cherish the moment to have played with a player like him. So my point is, there are some players that just have this aura around him. And Xabi Alonso played for Bayern Munich. He has played for Liverpool. He has played for Real Madrid. Spain, of course. He had a fantastic career. And somehow he's managed to take that aura to the bench. He got a natural authority. He got also that feeling that he has learned a lot from the great coaches he has had during his career, a bit like Zinedine Zidane. I met Zinedine Zidane in his role when he was the coach of Real Madrid too, because Martin Ødegaard played there. A bit shyer. I see that Alonso is more open. It's one of those coaches will have a great future. When they're talking about Ancelotti now maybe leaving Real Madrid, maybe this summer or next summer, he will be on the list of candidates. He will maybe be after Raúl, who is the coach of the Real Madrid second team, I think. But still, he will always be a candidate. He will always be linked to Liverpool. He will always be linked to Bayern Munich. And mind you, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge said when he left Bayern Munich, he said there is a big chance that we will see him back. So he could end up in 2-3 years' time being head of Bayern Munich. And I think that the project, we talked about this before, we've been disappointed, especially in the beginning of the season, what Leverkusen has done. But they're doing a lot of right things there. I'm a big fan. I like Simon Rolfes, who's the head of sport there. Great man. Then you have Rudi Völler, who's been around for 100 years, somehow around there, even though he is he's doing the task force or he's the head of sport at the German Football FA now before the Euros. So it's a lot of thing going on. It's also a team, Marcus, we've discussed this before. It's a team that is very enjoys to follow them. It's a great team. There's some good players, quick players, counter-attacks, brilliant. So Xabi Alonso has got it going for Leverkusen. Just to say at the end, Leverkusen is defined as a boring team. Why are they that? It's because they are the company team of Bayer, where whatever illness you have a look at the tablets or whatever you take, there will be a Bayer sign. And but the team, they have developed so many great players over the years. And Simon Rolfes, former captain, head of sport, the coach Xabi Alonso. They could be fighting the last 5 games to get a Champions League spot.
Yeah, very much looks like it. A lot of interesting players, like you say, young players, good at that recruitment bit. And without a Florian Wirtz, they won against RB Leipzig as well in a bit of a different fashion, in which there was more of a defensive approach, more counter-attacking. but they are fighting. And then to conclude it, we have the bottom places as well, where pretty much all the teams lost except for a Stuttgart draw. So it didn't change too much, but which will be a very exciting run-in. And then we'll see who from those teams gets the playoff spot to play. And I have a feeling it will be typical that Hamburg would get that.
Oh yeah,
but
that is,
then they would play the playoff.
And for those who do not understand what we're saying, Hamburger Sportverein, HSV, one of the biggest team of German football, been out of the Bundesliga for 5 years, somehow always in the top 2 till end of the season. Then they will have a relegation game, which they will lose. And that will probably happen again. Can you imagine if you get Schalke against the HSV? That could happen. Two of the greatest clubs in Germany making it out over 2 games, that relegation position, which means the third last in the Bundesliga, playing number 3 in the Zweite Bundesliga. And it's sensational what's going on in Zweite Liga. Darmstadt, a small city outside Frankfurt, and Mainz, kind of in the same area. And then you have Heidelberg. I'm not even sure where it is in Germany, but it's a very small football team, and they're going for it. It's going to be so excitement also in the second league now going in at the end of the season.
And we are there to follow it and analyze it. That hopefully, fingers crossed that I'm wary of saying the better team, because City look like the better team at the moment. But we will chat following this weekend, in which we'll undoubtedly invite a lot of different headlines and stories. So for now, Dad, thanks. And then we will catch up next week.
Auf Wiedersehen.